Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Victory podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. I'm coming to you on the early afternoon of June 4, 2025, with finally some nice weather in Western New York. How long it lasts is anyone's guess, because I'm not even sure the meteorologists know that one. But a few things to bring to your attention here. A lot of things happened last weekend. Um, but not exclusively last weekend. So on Sunday morning, this was before I went to church. I saw the first signs of this between 8 and 8:30 in the morning on Sunday, and um, basically what had happened was that Ukraine spent months in the planning of a very creative attack on Russian special operations aircraft. Um, I've heard that they're involved in the nuke program. I've heard they're involved in special forces. My guess is it's probably all of the above. But that's immaterial. Basically, what happened here was they smuggled in um, a bunch of drones, and they were going to attack 4 or 5 separate locations across Russia. And at the same time, these drones are released apparently by truck. That's how I heard the first reporting on this. And we're talking swarms of drones. And they just launched attacks at certain air bases inside Russia. And this comes after Russia did similar things in Ukraine with drones, with hundreds of drones doing a variety of attacks and killing like 20 some, 30 some kids, both specific targets as well as civilians. And there's an interesting story in the New York Times, and I know some of you are rolling your eyes saying, "Oh, Olson, you're passing along a story from the New York Times. I can't believe it." Um, I'm going to do it anyways. I will drop it in the description to this podcast, and you can access it at your leisure. But it is an interesting story about how even NATO is not prepared for this kind of new warfare. Um, it's worth your time, but at least 20 planes from on the at these Russian air bases were taken out of commission, um, and I'm not sure either one of these sides wants a peace deal. That's me. Iran. Um, there was some chatter over the weekend and into the early part of this week that I don't think there's been nearly enough attention on this Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff is Trump's special advisor who's involved in that area of the world right now. He's been doing Hamas and Israel ceasefire and hostage release talks. He's been doing the talks with Iran. And my guess is he will be involved in the talks with Ukraine and Russia. But recently, there was information that came out that uh, multiple headlines, especially early this week, that the U.S. is going to allow Iran to enrich uranium. And right now, it's a fight over definitions and a variety of other things. But the president has said very specifically Iran will not be allowed to enrich uranium for the purposes of creating nuclear weapons. So it will be interesting to see where that eventually goes. But let me say this. If Israel has any whiff that those talks don't eliminate Iran's nuclear program, they will take matters into their own hands and they will do it on their time. After all, there were reports, multiple reports that were leaked out of the US government that Israel was going to attack Iran's nuclear locations. And it was going to happen in the month of May. Now, that didn't happen because these negotiations are going on. And make no mistake, if Bibi Netanyahu and company do not like the outcome of these talks, they will take matters into their own hands. And I'm guaranteeing Tehran won't like it. Third item, Boulder, Colorado. So this happened between, I think it was 1 and 2 local time in Colorado, and since they're in the Mountain Time Zone, it would have been between, if I'm doing my math right, between 3 and 4 here, in the Eastern Time Zone. And basically, what happened was this. So there was a group of people that basically, this was like some kind of a run that was supposed to give recognition to the hostages that still remain in Gaza, the Israeli hostages that still remain in Gaza, and a promotion to getting them free once and for all. Well, I don't know how frequently this group does this in Boulder, Colorado, but this was set for last Sunday, June 1st. And a guy by the name of Mohammed Solomon, an Egyptian who has been in the United States since 2022, and his visa ran out at the end of 2023, and he has applied for asylum. Well, this guy planned an attack like this for over a year because he was waiting for his daughter to graduate. And apparently, Mr. Solomon may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer because while he may have thought, oh, there's only going to be repercussions on myself and I'll deal with that, now he's got the Department of Homeland Security potentially deporting his family. So basically, Solomon emerges without a shirt, Molotov cocktails in either hand, and he's just yelling at a group of people who are supporting the release of these hostages. And he's using all kinds of rhetoric against Jews and Israel and Molotov cocktails land. And ultimately, we have seen 15 people land in Boulder, Colorado area hospitals, some of whom had burns. Now, I have not seen any report of death so far, but one of those people that was injured in this attack was a Holocaust survivor, age 88. The people impacted by this attack were between the ages of 25 and 88. And Team Trump, too, now blaming Biden for allowing this guy into the country. Yet another example of how these people, this time not Venezuelans or Mexicans or others from south of our border attacking Americans here, This time it is someone from Egypt attacking Americans here, and Trump um, not only blaming Biden for this, but there is now talk of possible deportation of Soleiman's family. So, interesting event there that um, got attention very quickly. And the way the mainstream media handled it, it was immediately called a targeted terror attack. And CNN, MSNBC, and a variety of others just did not like that. And the fact that this guy was planning this for a year, an attack of some kind, and he had two Molotov cocktails on his person, and apparently there were either a total of 16 or 16 others. Um, so this guy had been planning something significant against Jews in Colorado for some time. Um, Interesting turn of events there in Boulder. And of course, Denver is a sanctuary city. And some people are also criticizing the state of Colorado for being a sanctuary city location. And that is the gist of what has happened there. There's federal crimes that are being um, charged against Solomon, um, and uh, and I believe those include federal hate crimes. So, um, something on our soil that involves events in Israel and Gaza, and yet another example of people who are anti Semites becoming unhinged. Harvard. There's a story that surfaced in the Wall Street Journal on Sunday, June 1st, about China's connections to Harvard University. And the problem is the story has a paywall. I've tried accessing it straight from the Wall Street Journal. I have not been successful in doing that. And I'm going to give you the gist of this in a piece from PJ Media, which is a town hall media. Because they ran with something yesterday, and the headline in the Wall Street Journal says that Harvard is regarded as China's party school. Now, when you say party school in the United States, you're thinking of the campuses that have a reputation for fraternities and sororities getting blitzed out of their minds, and just a full reputation of wanton, not only wanton abuse of alcohol, but everything that comes with that. But when the Wall Street Journal wrote this editorial, it was like a play on words, because party school in this case is all about Harvard being friendly with the Chinese Communist Party. I'm going to read a little bit of this because this piece in PJ Media from Town Hall Media um, quotes parts of the Wall Street Journal. For example, for decades, the Chinese Communist Party has sent thousands of mid career and senior bureaucrats to pursue executive training and postgraduate studies on U.S. campuses, with Harvard University a coveted destination described by some in China as the top party school outside the country. Alumni of such programs include former Vice President and Chinese leader Xi Jinping's top negotiator in trade talks with the first Trump administration. A little further down the story, in the academic year 2024, there were 277,000 Chinese nationals who are studying here at academic institutions in the United States. On the other hand, there are only 800 Americans who are studying at universities in China. Um, Another section from the story. Several years ago, and this is the writer for the uh, PJ Media piece, and his name is Scott Pinsker. Um, and he must be using a comment directly from the Wall Street Journal piece. Several years ago, a colleague teaching at Miami University, a large state school in Ohio, kindly invited me to give a talk there. After picking me up at the airport, he suggested we have lunch at a Sichuan restaurant near campus. I was skeptical. Sichuan in small town Ohio? Trust me, he said, it's fantastic. And it was. The reason a first class Sichuan cook had set up shop in this unlikely location soon became clear. At the time, the university was enrolling large numbers of Chinese students, more than 1,400 in 2024, for example. In fact, my colleague went on to tell me significant social tensions had arisen since the Chinese students were much wealthier than the American ones, to say nothing of the townspeople. As he said this, he pointed to a Chinese student driving past in a Maserati. Um, and the author of that Wall Street Journal piece is a gentleman by the name of David Bell, who was a history professor at Princeton. Um, but anyways, that kind of gives you the thrust of what's going on here with the Wall Street Journal um, writing a piece or printing a piece from this gentleman David Bell, where he argues that the Chinese Communist Party regard Harvard as their party school, meaning they're friendly to the Chinese Communist Party. Um, I'm sure Harvard is not alone. You could probably go to some of the other Ivies. You could probably go to Northwestern, Stanford. I'm just rattling off a few names of the elite schools in the country. Um, Perhaps would Vanderbilt be in the or some Southern college like maybe Elon College, maybe? Um, just doing some guesswork. Um, there has been reporting by the Free Press this year on the amount of money that China and Qatar and other countries throw at American education. And as troubling as all this information is, we just can continue to get a drip, drip, drip of all of the additional information that is coming on this. Meanwhile, speaking of higher education and the Chinese, the Department of Justice yesterday, I am not going to mention the two Chinese people at play here because I will butcher their names. Two Chinese nationals. This is a report from the Daily Signal, printed just this morning. Two Chinese nationals have been charged after smuggling a dangerous biological pathogen called Fusarium gramarum into the U.S., according to the Justice Department. Scientific literature classifies the fungus as a potential agro-terrorism weapon. These two people, both in their 30s, are citizens of China and have been charged with conspiracy, smuggling goods into the United States, false statements, and visa fraud, the Justice Department states. The FBI has arrested one of the two. The pathogen causes a disease known as head blight, a fungal disease that commonly affects wheat, barley, maize, and rice, and is responsible for billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide each year. The department says, adding that the fungus causes vomiting, liver damage, and reproductive defects in humans and livestock. Um, and the institution of higher education that one of these people worked at, the University of Michigan. Um, just a bad look all around here right now with China's influence on our country. Moving to the next to last item is Doge. And there's been a lot of people writing about Elon Musk being done with Doge, and comments recently he's made now that he's out of DC, with his criticism about the big beautiful bill. Um, I'm going to save the big beautiful bill stuff for another time because the Senate is still trying to figure out what they're going to do. But all I'm going to say is this. Um, the efforts by Doge, Elon Musk was a special employee to the federal government for a grand total of 130 days. And the efforts by Doge, I believe, should not be limited by a certain time span on a calendar. If you're going to dissect the federal government and find waste, fraud, and abuse across the government, um, you need to take arduous, tedious time and do that kind of activity. Yes, they have found ways to make certain federal agencies more efficient in terms of technology, but the waste, fraud, and abuse, I believe, is way more than just $150 billion. And the House is going to be considering a rescissions package, which would make 9.4 billion of those Doge cuts. Let me just say, 10 billion. I'll definitely take 10 billion, but that is a pittance. And if the members of the U.S. House and the Senate, specifically the Republican majorities, cannot bring themselves to codify all of the Doge cuts, these people should be booted from office. And that's going to lead me to my last topic. Last week, or last weekend, this would have been the weekend of the 30th, 31st, and 1st of June. It exploded with all kinds of things happening on the West Coast related to high school athletic events. And news was coming out of California and Oregon of boys beating high school girls in track events. We come to find out later that that also happened in Washington State, and that also has happened recently in the state of Minnesota. Um, Now, in Minnesota's case, it was not um, girls high school track. In the cases out west, all of it was track events. And in one case, in Oregon, you had a trans athlete win an event, and two girls stepped down off the podium, and an adult came by and insisted that they walk off the field. And one of those girls came out with a statement after the fact stating why they did what they did. Now, several things I want to say about this because what we have seen since the weekend is Team Trump uh, basically saying, uh, they're going to take funding away from California. Well, he's focusing on California because Governor Gavin Newsom there is regarded as a front runner in 2028 for the Democratic Party. So, but don't just take aim at California. Take aim at California, Oregon, Washington, Minnesota. Now, let me explain what happened in Minnesota. Minnesota recently had their girls' softball tournament, state softball tournament. And one of the schools has a 6-foot boy claiming he's a girl. And this kid threw pitches so fast, very few high school girls in the state of Minnesota could hit this person, meaning get base hits or more off this person. And I believe the guy's last name is now Rothenberg, and I believe it's Samantha Rothenberg, stands 6 foot tall. Now, when all of the executive orders started, and Trump came out very early with specific orders against allowing boys to play in girls and women's sports. And it was very predictable that this was going to be the issue that caused this to remain, the executive orders to remain in public scrutiny. Now, my take on this is really simple. I said this when the GOP took control of the House and the Senate in January, and I'm going to say it again. The GOP is quickly losing golden opportunity to codify some, if not all, of Trump's executive orders into law. They're not doing it. And all of this stuff involving boys competing in girls' sports, with this case being high school, we could say the same thing about colleges. This is why you don't do executive orders. Executive orders do not have the force of law. And even if the Congress did pass a law, there would be a lawsuit challenging it, and there would be a legal fight there. You don't govern a country by executive order. It just does not work that way. Meanwhile, we have MAGA types all across the country, and I realize a lot of people who, if not exclusively all the viewers of this podcast, probably voted for Donald Trump, which is fine. You can do that. But can we at least agree that the Congress is losing a golden opportunity to codify into law the wishes of the president? And I mark my words, if the Congress does not display the boldness and courage and get this stuff done, There will be a Democrat who eventually comes on the scene, becomes president of the United States, and allows transgenderism carte blanche again. And we already have reports that corporate America and a variety of other organizations are finding a way to call DEI something else and just hide it away in their companies just in time for a Democrat or whoever to come on the scene again and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And DEI again is diversity, equity, and inclusivity in hiring practices, meaning people aren't hired based on merit. This Congress is a tremendous disappointment right now. And if I were to grade them by letter grade, uh letter grade, um giving them a C would be incredibly generous. They probably deserve a D or D minus. And if I were to grade them on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably have to give them a 7 to a 70 to a 75. This Congress is just a massive disappointment. And they were elected, especially in the Senate, with a little bit of guts. Oh, but this is my repeated problem with people who say, "Well, the Democrats will filibuster whatever in the Senate." I don't care. There was once a time in this country when the president used his political capital to get his wishes completed in the Congress and elsewhere. Donald Trump doesn't do that. And even though you don't have the 60 in the Senate to bypass a filibuster, it doesn't mean you don't try to get your agenda passed. And it's just infuriating watching this Congress be absolutely impotent when, okay, I can acknowledge the House has a slight majority that they're playing with, but for the president not to use the biggest bully pulpit in the world and the Senate leadership to not take charge on some things is an absolute injustice. And Republicans will rue the day this Congress didn't act boldly early and often. Because one of two things is going to happen here. People are going to be so frustrated with the inaction in the Congress, they're either going to go more MAGA or they're going to be in a spot like me, who is part of the millions of Americans who are politically homeless. That's all I have for this week on his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. I'm dropping a new column on something happening that has recently happened in one of the denominations in churches. Um, and we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And until next time, God bless and goodbye.